what is a reasonable payment schedule?
That's a great question, and a lot of homeowners make mistakes and pay a contractor too much up front. We've heard the horror stories, right? Where they get a lot of money and not a lot of work, and then he's gone. So how can you safeguard yourself? Well, number one, there are rules in place. Like I know here in California, you cannot give somebody more than $1,000 or 10%, whichever is greater. So so if they ask for $5,000 2 weeks before the job starts, that's illegal.
Oh, okay.
You can't do that.
That's
A
good
lot
to
of
know.
homeowners don't even know that.
Yeah, no, I don't think.
And a lot of people, they want to trust the contractor. Hi, how you doing? Get a handshake. They met the guy a couple times. He seems like a really nice guy. And, you know, maybe his kid's on their kid's soccer team, whatever. And so he's like, oh, by the way, you know, I'm going to need $6,000 so I can order this, that, and the other. Well, it's illegal, and things can turn south pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If he's in financial trouble already, and now all of a sudden he's borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and the next thing you know, he's upside down on your job.
Yeah.
So this happens a lot.
Okay.
So a contractor is not good at managing his finances. Maybe he did a couple jobs where he underbid them. And now comes your job. He's trying to make it up. And he owes some other sub some more money. This is a scenario that happens all the time. So he gets a bunch of money from you, he pays those guys off, then all of a sudden he realizes, you know, there's not enough left in this job for me to survive or keep this business going, and sometimes they could just take off.
Yeah.
Another important detail is not just the deposit, but the payment schedule. So a conscientious contractor who is playing by the rules will make sure that he lists the payment schedule in such a way that the homeowner is always a little bit ahead.
Okay.
And that's something that I do too. And it's important that there's always that big carrot, right? So not only do you not want to give them too big of a deposit up front, but you kind of want to stagger or space the payment amounts in such a way that he's giving you, you know, a little more work than you've paid him until the very end, when everything's 100% done and you are 100% satisfied and everything's cleaned up and you know, worked everything, opened all the cabinets, whatever it is, and maybe even lived in it for at least a few days. Then maybe give him that final payment, because if you get that final payment to him too soon and you discover some issues, it could be difficult getting him back. Now, there's obviously a lot of quality contractors that wouldn't do that, but there are some, once they get the money, they're gone, right? They're off to the next job. So you gotta be careful with the payment schedule. And one thing I tell people is that, let's say your contractor has the contract for the remodel and he's got his payment schedule, and it looks to you that, gosh, it seems like it's heavily weighted in the front. Well, you have the right to change it.
Okay.
But you need to do that before the job starts.
Okay.
And you can be like, look, this looks great, but would you mind if we sort of defer some of the money and the payments closer to the end of the job? You can say, look, I had a bad experience with another guy, or I had a friend that had a bad experience. And at that moment, that's your time to negotiate, right? Before you sign the contract and you're ready to hire him. Once you start and give them some money, it's too late. So I try to tell people, be careful in the beginning.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to change the payment schedule. So if he gives you one, you fire back and say, you know what, we're gonna do this. I even had one customer who I had a great relationship with, and it was a referral and everything was going great, but she was a controller for a big company, accountant. And so every time I asked her for like $10,000, she would intensely just give me like $800 or $8,500, and I just kind of giggled and laughed, because that was just the nature, because she is in charge of paying, you know, hundreds of subcontractors in her own business.
Right.
And she was in the biotech field, and but she was doing that because she understood how that works too. It's like, just because he asks you for, you know, this much doesn't mean you have to give it to him. He'll, you know, you give him most of it and explain why, and I'm sure you won't get any arguments. So the homeowner sometimes has to be the one that, you know, keeps the checks and balances and uses common sense.
Right.